King Deja found himself on the floor, holding his chest in disbelief that he was actually shot. He thought of many things he still wanted to do before dying. He thought of Queen's warnings and the fact he doesn't have a child yet. He started to regret ever following the warrior down there and wished to get just one more chance to live again. The warrior rallied round him to get off for quick first aid treatment, only to find out that the gunshot didn't hit him. It rather missed him to the next person who was a little far behind him. They checked King Deja's entire body to be sure he was fine, and then lifted him up to stand to his feet properly. No one knew he wasn't the one hurt. Even the king thought he was already dying. They rushed to the actual victim behind the king and tried to help him stay alive till the end of the battle. But it was too late because that warrior had died immediately he was shot. The gods must have saved the king from that gunshot, because the gunshot wasn't an ordinary one. It had been fortified to penetrate through the king's charms and kill him instantly. But the gods were solidly behind him and directed the gunshot to another place, which happened to be where that warrior was standing. They had no time to mourn the dead, as the rest of the warriors were still fighting and struggling for their lives on the battlefield. They just spared that little minute to check their king, because he was their priority at the time. They all ran at once to join the rest of their warriors, with the boiling anger in them, having seen a great warrior die just like that. They fought to survive the war, to take over their land, and to avenge the instant death of one of them. After about 2 minutes of their continual attack at their opponent, tables turned and they started having the winning edge over them. It was as though a strange atmosphere took over their opponent and made them all less strong than they were. Omuaran warriors noticed this too, but they had no time to give that a thought or start to notice that for too long. They only saw that as an advantage and assumed that the gods had seen them losing and wanted to help them. So they took their weakness as a sign of assistance from the gods to win the battle. Soon, they killed a lot of their opponents' warriors and watched others flee away from them. They then started enchanting songs of victory as they marched back to the village. The king, King Deja, rode on his royal horse, which was the biggest and finest amongst the horses they all rode to the battlefield. He joined them in singing the songs of victory they were singing, and he seemed to have known all the songs in accordance to how they sang it. As they entered the village square, people came out of their huts and jubilated with the king and his warriors upon their triumphant retrieval of the land that had always been theirs since they all became of age. They followed them straight to the palace. They would have loved to dance around the village, but they couldn't because of the king's involvement. They were warmly welcomed at the palace. The king ordered that they all be fed, both the well-wishers and the warriors. It was indeed a remarkable day in the history of kingship, and in particular King Deja's record. They ate and drank till it was late in the night. Then they all left the palace for their houses to sleep. They needn't cook anymore because they already ate more than enough at the palace. The news of King Deja's participatory in the just concluded victorious war spread round Omuaran and its environs, and this made people love him more. He gained his people's trust in no time and intended to keep it that way because he needed the people to continue talking about him for good anywhere they traveled to. He needed the good record to be termed great when he finally goes to join his ancestors. He was happy everything was going on very well in the village. His queen was also months pregnant and even brought more joy to his heart. He was going to be a father at 41, so he wanted to make the village atmosphere a good one for his child to land and live in. He ruled the affairs of the village freely and fairly. He was praised and loved by the gods for this, so they blessed him with a male child. The child was christened, named as tradition demanded, and everybody went about doing their normal thing. Everything was fine for so long a time, until King Deja incurred the wrath of the gods upon he and his people.
It happened that they were planning to go to the next 3 villages to capture and make them slaves in Omuaran Palace. They needed more hands on the palace farm and felt Egata, the small kingdom they were planning to enslave, was going to do a great job if their lives depended on it. Not that they were too lazy to get the job done by themselves, but they wanted to make use of their power and prowess over these people. King Deja couldn't bear to see his own people slaving for him on the farm. He rather wanted some unknown individual to do that. He planned with the warriors silently, without even informing the village chiefs who were supposed to be closest to the king. They couldn't afford to have the information leak out to the people to avoid disrupting anything. They wanted to take them unawares by the end of that week so that they would catch them off guard. The king and his warriors had already visited the chief priest at the shrine to fortify themselves in preparation for the capturing.
They ate all that needed to be eaten and drank everything they were as instructed by the gods through the chief priest. All they did after that was wait for the appointed day and pray for the capturing to be a success. Large number of Omuaran warriors visited a friend. They all considered so close to the warriors' chief, Balogun, and decided to take their time to eat and drink what they were offered. Unknowing to them, their so-called friend had chipped Agata people that they were going to be captured soon. Only the gods know how he was able to get that information. His friend must have spilled it out during one of their talking sessions. Agata Kingdom devised a plan to abort Omuaran mission on getting that information. One of them disguised a wanted friend who just wanted to dine with the warriors for the love of their work. He put some diabolical, forbidding powdered substance inside their food and drinks and watched them take it in. They drank to stupor and were also giving strange women home to lay with. They laid with them and only got to know of this when their eyes became clear the following day. They came back to their senses, regretted their actions, and had to hurriedly report themselves to Balogun. Balogun took off to the palace almost immediately he got to know of this, because they had no time to waste. The scheduled date for the capturing was just around the corner, and they needed to do something about it. The chief priest had earlier warned them against laying with any woman until they were back from the assignment they were being prepared for. So it was going to be a little tough washing off the things they took in and taking back what the maidens had taken away from them when they lay with them. If they didn't take immediate actions, the substance could kill them all and their powers permanently taken from them. So the Balogun had to swing into action with immediate effect. The king was shocked hearing this. He became perplexed and sad on hearing this. He then sent for the chief priest to come consult the gods before them to see if there was a remedy for this. He prayed there was solution to all these, even as he thought of making a recruit of warriors. But even if he recruited new warriors, they were not going to meet up with the planned capturing.
The Egata people really got them this time. They were really underestimated. The chief priest arrived and the consultation began. He did that for some minutes and communicated with the gods in an unknown language. After 30 minutes of conversing with the gods, he finally said something. He said the gods demanded that they sacrifice 7 virgins for their refortification and purification. They were shocked to hear what the gods had demanded of them and didn't know how to get 7 virgins in 24 hours. They only had 24 hours for any preparation they wanted to do. The chief priest left and they began to think of possible ways to get 7 virgins in 24 hours for the refortification and purification of their warriors.
The king pondered on the issue all night, as he didn't know how to get the requested number of virgins before the next night, if they were going to go with the war as planned. He thought of sending some palace guards to the village boundaries to capture any maiden they saw passing. He discarded the thought because they might end up taking some of Omuaran's citizens. He thought of enticing them with money because he was rich and had affluence. He cancelled that thought when he realized a lot of brooding is required for anyone to concede to such. He reminded himself of the need for anyone who would do such to consult their relatives for consent and agreement. So he decided to go with his second option. But that would mean that the fixed date for the battle and capturing would be postponed. So he consoled himself and reassured himself of the high rate of success they would get if they fought their battles after the sacrifice, no matter how long it would take to get all they needed for the sacrifice. The following morning, King Deja called the town crier to go round the village, announcing the urgent need for 7 virgin maidens who would lay down their lives for the progress of the kingdom and the heavy prices attached to it. He told the town crier he was going to share half of his wealth amongst the 7 maidens' family and make sure they never lacked anything good till they die. The town crier rose immediately. and left King Deja's presence to deliver the message to circulate round the whole village. He went to every nook and cranny of Omuaran kingdom. By the time it was noon, he had already finished delivering the message sent him by the king. So he headed back to the palace to give the king feedback. King Deja, knowing they wouldn't be able to get all complete 7 maidens at once, and certainly not within the space of 2 hours, called the warriors and their chief, Balogun, to the palace, shared what he had done that early morning, and how they would need to postpone the day slated for the war/capturing to take place, and for them to come back to the village in one piece. They agreed and had no objection whatsoever, probably because he was king. The day continues to count, with no trace of any maiden coming to surrender themselves for the sacrifice. Everybody started getting worried. They are liable to be defeated should anyone try challenging them to war. Their warriors were as ordinary as their housewives, so they needed the cleansing urgently, even if they were not going to go for a Gata capturing again. The king called the chief priest and asked if there could be something else done to replace the killing of the 7 virgins. He sighed and told the king that the only other remedy to what they've done was to lose their manhood. The king shouted, "What? How can that be the only remedy left as an option for them?" The chief priest smiled and told the king that the substance put inside the warriors' food was very powerful. They made sure of that to render them powerless instantly, which was successful anyways. King Deja then took his mind off getting another option to solving their problems. He focused on getting the 7 virgins as soon as 7 days before the next market day. He sensed the news of their warriors being nothing, and the gods getting angry at them must have flown to the neighboring kingdoms, and they could leverage on this to attack them on the next market day. He prayed the gods directed some maidens to him for the sacrifice. He thought of asking the hunters to bring any stranger they saw at the border of their kingdom to him for the sacrifice. But the sacrifice was one of its kind, which has to be voluntary because of the kind of maidens involved in it. The announcement of the needed 7 virgins for sacrifice to the gods continued to linger in the mouth of the people, as it was now the subject for discussion everywhere women were gathered in Omuaran kingdom. The king called a meeting and reminded the village heads and his chiefs that they all had just 6 days to get the sacrifice ready and have their warriors back in track, or else they would be doomed. While they were at the meeting, a palace guard walked in and informed the king that a maiden was outside, waiting to see him. He signaled the guard, asking him to bring whoever that was outside inside. The guard stood up and ran off to bring the guest in without any further delay.